I'm Bertram de Souza.
And I'm Cynthia Rickard. We're co-hosts of the Scribbler video podcast, which is streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and other digital platforms. Yesterday, I attended what was billed as a public meeting of the Youngstown State University Board of Trustees, and I was appalled at what I witnessed. I've been a journalist for more than 40 years, both as a reporter and an editor, and I have never seen such rude and dismissive behavior by public servants. They not only totally ignored pleas from a pretty sizable group clamoring to comment on the board's recent appointment of right-wing politician Bill Johnson to the university presidency, they wouldn't even acknowledge their request and continued to talk over their voices. Meanwhile, they paraded a number of students and faculty to the podium who spoke about their programs or accomplishments, clearly in an effort to run out the meeting clock. To add insult to injury, Board President Michael Peterson waited until the most vocal among the protesters were escorted out of the room to even formally address the matter, then waited until the meeting was adjourned to defend the board's action not to the crowd, but to reporters. His claim that Johnson will simply be leading and won't be bringing his politics to campus is laughable, if for no other reason than Johnson's own words in recent days. Parents tell him they want their kids to be educated, not indoctrinated in college, he said. That view falls right in line with extremists who believe universities are cesspools of liberal, I call it progressive, thinking, and who continue to search for ways to impose their conservative beliefs on the majority of Americans. More blatantly, Johnson asked, if you can express your political opinion, why can't I? Could his plans for the university be any clearer?
People who went to the meeting, and I understand there was a large crowd, were under the
standing room only. Yeah, it was standing room only.
Were under the impression they were going to be able to speak, because that's what they believed the trustees had announced during the November meeting. And so when they were not permitted to have a say, what was their reaction? Were people angry? Were people frustrated? Or the people just throw up their hands and admit defeat?
Well, they were frustrated, certainly. I mean, I could see people shifting in their seats, even those who weren't speaking out. The most vocal protester, who seemed to be speaking for whoever was there to protest the appointment, repeatedly said that they were promised the opportunity to speak. I wasn't at the November meeting, so I don't know what was said, what they were told, or if they were told afterwards. But they definitely were under the impression that they were going to be allowed to speak at the meeting. And even after they were escorted out and after the meeting adjourned, there was an older couple that I heard expressing their own frustration that, this isn't what they expected and this isn't what they were told. So yeah, they expected to be able to speak for sure. There was one gentleman who stood up while she was making her voice heard and turned around and screamed to the crowd that 190,000 people elected Bill Johnson in the last election, and he was booed.
Okay, and then as I've noted previously, it appears to me that the trustees, all appointed by either Governor Mike DeWine or former Governor John Kasich, and Congressman Bill Johnson, the Republican who has represented the Mahoning Valley since 2011, have dug in. I mean, they're leaving the impression in their public comments that this is a done deal and nothing's going to change their minds. What is your impression after attending yesterday's meeting?
Well, I hesitate to say one way or the other because I have seen public furor change actions before. But certainly the board has dug in its heels and feel that they were entitled to do what they did and that their action is valid. I was surprised that Peterson said that they had sent out inquiries to, I'm not sure if it was to the whole student body or just to a group of them, but they got back 600. Um, and I think that it would go a long way toward, uh, appeasing some of these misgivings if they would have at least published those remarks, even if they take the names off of them. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure that anybody is going to be convinced that this was the right decision until they do something else, and I'm not sure that they will.
And the trustees keep insisting that the process was not shrouded in secrecy. And if that's the case, why don't they make every document relating to this search public? They should just post it online and let people read for themselves everything that is rated. You were at the Youngstown Vindicator for 41 years. I was there for 40 years. And we had similar situations like this before. And, we always challenged any attempt to keep things secret by public entities, because that's what they are. They are public entities. And for them and for the trustees to insist that anybody involved in this process sign a non-disclosure agreement is ludicrous.
Yeah, that's really unheard of as far as I know. I've never heard of that before. I don't know about you, but I've just never heard of that before, especially for a public university where taxpayer dollars are involved.
Yeah, in fact, Molly Seald, one of the trustees who voted against the hiring of Johnson, did an interview with the Daily Beast, and she said, she talked about it was her impression that something else was going on. There was something more to this story. And then she said something to the effect, well, there are certain things I cannot talk about because I signed a non-disclosure. My God. Why
that non-disclosure agreement kind of explains the behavior of all of the rest of the trustees besides the president, because they said nary a word.
Right. And
including Molly Seals.
And why would anybody who either is serving on a public body or is even in the university, because I'm told there were about 20 people on campus who were involved in the final screening of the candidates, but they too had to sign NDAs. Why would they do that? Well,
I don't know.
This is, and we at the paper, when we were there, we would have challenged that.
Yeah.
Because I think it speaks to the responsibilities of public entities.
Right. Well, Peterson is justifying their action by saying that they interviewed a number of firms, and I don't remember search firms, and I don't remember if it was 3 or 5, and that they all told them that in this day and age, these secret searches are the only way to go. So, and he gave no further explanation about that, which I don't know. I wasn't very satisfied with that.
No,
so I'm sure that those on campus, faculty and students, aren't very satisfied with it.
To think that if you are an executive vice president, or you're a provost, or you're some high-ranking administrator at a university, yes, you're going to be looking for better opportunities, and people on those campuses expect that. You don't expect, a president shouldn't expect that whoever is working for him or her is just going to continue working for him or her indefinitely. People want upward mobility. And to suggest that, well, applicants are afraid of what will happen to them, in their current jobs if they're outed, so to speak, is silly. There's an expectation that people are going to want to better themselves regardless of what their jobs are currently.
Right.
And so after the meeting, or when you had a chance to walk around, what is your impression as to what the protesters, or those who are either objecting to the secrecy of the process or the appointment of Congressman Johnson, what's your impression as to what comes next?
Boy, I don't know. I mean, I just heard a lot of disgust from people that I passed on my way out. That room was standing room only, and there were lots of protest signs at the back. There were a couple in one of the rows where I was standing near that I don't know if they had held them up before I got there. They didn't while I was there. There was one sign in favor of Bill Johnson saying, Bill or Bill Johnson for president. I'm not sure which presidency they were talking about. But the rest of them were all protest signs, and they were, the meeting takes place in what the university calls the fishbowl.
Right.
So the whole back is all glass, and there's a kind of a stairway balcony up at the top, and there were even people up there. They were holding signs up inside the room and outside the room and plastering them on that window so that the trustees could clearly see what they were saying.
So you got a chance, as this was going on and people were demanding to speak, to look at the trustees. I'm sure you did. So did they look like they were deers in the headlights? I mean, or were they all looking down at
They were totally ignoring them. They were, you know, and none of them spoke. I think the provost spoke. I'm not familiar with him, but one of the faculty that I know told me that was the provost. He spoke at some point, but not in relation to that. And Peterson was really the only one that spoke. They averted their eyes from what I could see. You know, they weren't, they didn't even directly look at them. And they did have a guy who I assume was a security guy, because he eventually is the one who went over and escorted the really vocal protester out, and there were other people who went out with her. But I could see that a lot of them were pretty disgusted.
Yeah, I mean, as you said at the opening, and I have covered, as like you, hundreds of public meetings and events, to simply ignore, even if it wasn't on your agenda, at least acknowledge that people came out because they care enough to want to express themselves.
Yeah,
and give them an opportunity.
That's what was shocking to me, was they didn't even pause and say, you know, we'll give you the opportunity to speak elsewhere. We appreciate that you came. You know, we appreciate you want to express your opinion. They said absolutely nothing to them. Totally acted like they weren't even there.
Okay, so because nobody was given the opportunity to speak, we, the Scribbler Video podcast, we're talking about doing a live podcast on the situation where people will be invited to call in, and we'll be making an announcement of that when it is, and we'll be doing it via Skype as we're doing now. And so, you know, people can call in a number which we will publicize and express themselves, and we'll have some important guests. So for now, we're gonna sort of close. But before I do, let me close with this. While I was watching what was going on, this thought crossed my mind. The hiring of Congressman Johnson as president lends itself to a great marketing slogan for YSU, which is, "We don't want the best and the brightest, we embrace mediocrity." And I think that's, to me, is the message that's coming out from the trustees. So we'll be chatting again.
All right.
Thanks, and